A rejected notion. So in the early 1900s, many people in the scientific community believed the continents and ocean basins to be fixed features, that they didn't move, that they were always in the same place. But Wegener continued his polar expeditions and collected more data. And although he had an impressive amount of data, his continental drift hypothesis was not accepted in Wegener's lifetime. And this is basically a picture of Wegener on one of his expeditions. Says collect further evidence for his theory on a 1930 expedition to Greenland. He died during this expedition many years before his data became the basis for the theory of plate tectonics. So he had all of his data. He had the right idea, but it just was not accepted at the time. The question is why? Well, some flaws in the continental drift hypothesis. There were two major flaws in the continental drift hypothesis. First, did not explain what force could be strong enough to push such large masses over great distances. So Wegener suggested it was Earth's rotation, but physicists showed that this was not nearly enough force to cause this. So he couldn't explain where the forces were coming from to cause the continents to move. Second, scientists questioned how the continents were moving. So where was the energy coming from, and then how were they moving? So Wegener proposed that they were simply plowing through a stationary ocean floor, that the ocean floor was stationary, and then you had this continent that would just plow through the floor. Okay. But it was known that the mantle below the crust was solid, so could they move through something solid? That's the question. Could you actually have these giant continents move through something solid? The other thing is, where were the tracks from these? If they were just plowing through the ocean floor, that should leave some sort of track. So again, Wegener had the right idea, but he couldn't explain the energy, and it couldn't explain the processes for continental drift. Now, in the early 1960s, new technology revealed new evidence about how the continents moved. So we had advances in seafloor mapping, so we actually have better maps of the seafloor developed during this time. And then we also have a better understanding of Earth's magnetic field. So these new developments, combined with what Wegener had already published, allowed us to revisit this idea of continental drift. Now, this provided evidence of how the continents moved and a source of the forces involved. So now we have a mechanism. So we have all the data showing that it happened, but we didn't know how. And now with these advances in seafloor mapping and new technology to study the magnetic field of the Earth, we have enough evidence to show how the continents moved